Commander Vix of the Galactic Alliance's 7th Reconnaissance Fleet never expected to encounter a Class 12 Death World species during a routine border patrol. Yet here they were, engaged in combat with creatures from a planet humans called Earth, a high-gravity, radiation-bathed nightmare with extreme temperature variations and toxic atmospheric components. "Maintain formation," Vix ordered through the neural link connecting the 60 members of his squad. The bipedal aliens had ambushed them in the dense forest of Outpost KZ-419, a strategic position the Alliance couldn't afford to lose. Lieutenant Marlowe, Vix's second-in-command, gestured with 3 of his upper limbs toward the enemy position. "Commander, their tactics defy logic. They're splitting their forces despite being outnumbered." Vix's compound eyes narrowed as he processed this information. The Alliance's intelligence on humans was limited, but one thing was clear. Despite being categorized as primitives by galactic standards, they were unnervingly effective warriors. "They're flanking us," Vix realized. "Redirect squads 3 and 4 to the eastern perimeter." Too late. The forest erupted with small arms fire as a team of human soldiers burst from concealed positions. Their primitive projectile weapons shouldn't have been effective against modern galactic armor, but somehow they were. "Plasma shields failing," reported a soldier before his neural signature blinked out. Vix watched in horror as his troops began to fall. The humans moved with shocking speed, their endurance seemingly limitless as they charged through the dense underbrush. Unlike the carefully calculated movements of Alliance soldiers, the humans fought with a frenzied intensity that bordered on madness. One human in particular caught Vix's attention, a tall figure with dark protective gear who moved with particular grace and precision. The squad leader, perhaps. Every movement was economical, every shot found its mark. "Focus fire on the leader," Vix commanded, adjusting his own plasma rifle. 3 Alliance soldiers targeted the human squad leader simultaneously. Their coordinated fire created a blinding flash of energy that engulfed the human's position. When the light faded, Vix expected to see nothing but carbonized remains. Instead, the human emerged from the blast zone, diving behind a fallen tree. The left arm of the creature was completely gone below the shoulder, vaporized by the plasma volley. Dark red human blood poured from the wound, splashing across the forest floor. "Target neutralized," reported Lieutenant Marlowe. No species can function after losing a limb without immediate medical intervention. Vix wasn't so certain. Something about the human's movements seemed too deliberate for a dying creature. He was about to order a confirmation strike when the human suddenly rose from cover. With one fluid motion, the human soldier removed a tourniquet device from a pocket and applied it to the stump of the severed arm. Then, impossibly, the human retrieved its weapon with its remaining hand. "Impossible," whispered Marlowe over the neural link. "The pain alone should have rendered it unconscious." The human soldier raised its weapon, aimed, and fired, all with one arm. Marlowe's neural signature vanished as the projectile found its mark. Vix stared in disbelief. The human's combat effectiveness had barely diminished despite catastrophic injury. As the one-armed soldier directed the other humans to advance, Vix realized with growing dread that everything the Alliance knew about warfare might be insufficient against these creatures. "Fall back," he ordered. "Defensive positions at the base camp. Now." As his troops retreated, Vix couldn't tear his gaze from the human squad leader. The creature had just lost a limb, and yet fought on as if merely inconvenienced. What kind of Deathworld evolution could produce such resilience? For the first time in his military career, Commander Vix felt true fear. Private Jack Ross gritted his teeth against the searing pain where his left arm used to be. The battlefield stim-pack injected from his combat suit was working, but barely. He could feel the blood loss starting to affect him, his vision occasionally blurring at the edges. "Keep moving," he muttered to himself, the tourniquet's auto-constriction system tightening to compensate for his dropping blood pressure. "Captain," shouted Miller, his squad's medic, sliding into cover beside him. "Jesus Christ, your arm." "Not important," Ross grunted, despite the medic's protests about his rank. The squad had taken to calling him captain after their actual commanding officer died during the drop. The bugs are retreating to their base camp. We can't lose this momentum. Miller's face showed clear concern as he pulled out a biofoam canister. At least let me seal it properly. That tourniquet's just emergency measures. Ross nodded reluctantly, wincing as Miller applied the expanding medicinal foam to the stump. The cold sensation of the foam hardening around the wound provided momentary relief from the burning pain. Listen up, Ross called to the remaining 7 members of his squad as Miller worked. The Alliance forces don't understand what they're facing. They expect us to follow their protocols, to retreat when injured, to wait for mechanical assistance. He looked each soldier in the eye. We're not going to do that. They've never fought humans before and they don't understand our capacity to adapt. Corporal Daniels, the squad's communications specialist, spoke up. Sir, HQ reports that Alliance reinforcements are inbound. ETA 20 minutes. We're ordered to hold position and wait for the second drop team. Ross knew what that meant. 20 minutes was too long. If they allowed the Insectoid Alliance troops to reorganize, the tactical advantage of surprise would be lost. Not an option, Ross decided. If we wait, they'll bring in air support. We move now. He tested his balance as he stood. The missing arm had changed his center of gravity, but his combat training included adaptations for injury. Ross shifted his stance slightly, compensating for the imbalance. Sir, with respect, you need medical evacuation, Miller insisted. Ross shook his head. No time. Besides, I've still got one good arm, don't I? He managed a grim smile as he checked his weapon's magazine with his remaining hand. The motion, practiced thousands of times during training, came naturally, even one-handed. Jones, take point. Peterson and Miller, flank left. Daniels and Adams, with me up the middle. Thompson and Wright, provide covering fire from that ridge. Ross gestured with his gun toward a small rocky outcropping. Standard leapfrog advance. Questions? The squad stared at him in a mixture of awe and concern. Sir, Peterson finally spoke. Are you sure you can? I can fight, Ross cut him off. That's all that matters right now. As they moved out, Ross caught glimpses of the Alliance soldiers retreating through the forest. Their movements were panicked, uncoordinated. The sight of a human continuing to fight after losing a limb had clearly shattered some fundamental assumption about combat. The Alliance troops had evolved on a world where precision and coordination were paramount. Their exoskeletons provided natural protection, but injury to any limb typically meant death in the harsh environment of their homeworld. Their tactics reflected this biological reality. They operated as a perfect unit, but individual adaptability was minimal. Humans, by contrast, had evolved as persistence predators on a world that tried to kill them daily. Pain was information, not incapacitation. Injury was a setback, not defeat. As Ross signaled the next advance, he smiled grimly. The Alliance was about to learn a harsh lesson about Deathworlders. Commander Vix paced the perimeter of the hastily established defensive position. The base camp, originally intended as a simple supply depot, had been transformed into a fortress in the 15 minutes since their retreat from the forest. Report, he demanded. Officer Tilk, the unit's tactical analyst, projected a holographic map from his neural implant. We've established 3 defensive rings, Commander. Energy shields at 87% capacity. Automated defense turrets online. 42 combat-ready troops remaining. And the humans? Approaching from the south. They've maintained pursuit despite our superior speed. 17 confirmed hostiles. Vix's mandibles clicked in agitation. By all tactical calculations, 17. Injured primitives should pose no threat to a fortified position with more than double their numbers. Yet the memory of the one-armed human soldier efficiently directing the attack made his carapace tighten with stress. They shouldn't be this effective, Tilk observed, echoing Vix's thoughts. The wounded one especially. Our biological database indicates humans require 2 upper limbs for proper weapon handling and balance. The database is wrong, Vix said flatly. These creatures adapt. A warning signal pulsed through the neural network. Perimeter sensors had detected movement. Positions, Vix ordered. The remaining troops moved with practiced precision to their designated defensive spots. Through his magnified vision, Vix spotted the humans advancing in a staggered pattern that made targeting difficult. The one-armed leader was in the center, moving with deliberate confidence. Instead of being hampered by the injury, the human had already modified its combat stance to compensate for the missing limb. First line, open fire, Vix commanded. Energy, weapons discharged in perfect synchronization, illuminating the approaching dusk with pulses of superheated plasma. The humans scattered, taking cover behind terrain features with remarkable speed. They're drawing our fire, Vix realized too late. It's a distraction. From the eastern approach, previously undetected humans opened fire on the base's shield generators. How had they circled around so quickly? The primitive projectile weapons hammered against the energy barriers, each impact reducing shield strength incrementally. Shields at 62%, Tilk reported, his usual calm demeanor showing cracks. Commander, their attack pattern is unpredictable. The algorithms can't establish targeting solutions. That was the problem with fighting humans, Vix was learning. The Alliance military was built on precise calculations, flawless coordination, and adherence to established doctrine. The humans fought with improvisation, with what appeared to be moment-by-moment adaptation. Target the eastern group, Vix ordered. As the defensive turrets swiveled to engage the flanking humans, the main group, led by the one-armed soldier, charged directly toward the base's southern entrance. They can't penetrate the shields, Tilk said with certainty. Vix wasn't so sure. He watched as the one-armed human reached the shield perimeter, pulled something from a vest pocket, and attached it to the energy barrier. Explosive device, Vix shouted. The detonation created a localized disruption in the shield matrix, not enough to bring down the entire barrier, but sufficient to create a momentary opening. The humans rushed through the gap before the self-repairing systems could seal it. They're inside the perimeter, Tilk reported unnecessarily. Vix observed the wounded human leader directing the assault with hand signals, compensating for the missing limb with subtle body movements. There was something almost beautiful about the efficiency with which the creature had adapted to its grave injury. Fall back to secondary positions, Vix ordered. For the first time in his military career, he added, prepare for close combat. The Alliance soldiers were not built for physical confrontation. Their technological superiority had made such primitive fighting unnecessary for generations. As the humans breached the inner perimeter, Vix wondered if the proud military history of his species was about to meet its end at the hands of injured Deathworlders, who simply refused to acknowledge defeat. Ross leaned against a metallic wall inside the alien base, breathing heavily. The stim pack was wearing off, and waves of pain radiated from his missing arm. He checked the biofoam seal, still holding, but the dark red staining at the edges suggested internal bleeding. Status, he demanded, his voice rougher than before. We've secured the outer ring, Miller reported. Thompson took a hit, but he'll live. The bugs have fallen back to what looks like a command center. Ross nodded. What about our flanking team? Adams reports they've disabled the shield generators completely. They're moving to join us. Through the transparent sections of the bases, architecture, Ross could see Earth hanging in the blackness of space, blue, green, and swirled with white clouds. So much worth fighting for. The Alliance had chosen the wrong planet to invade. Captain, Miller said quietly, checking Ross's vitals on his wrist device. You're going into shock. The suit's compensating, but you can't keep this up much longer. I just need to keep it up long enough, Ross replied, pushing himself upright. The second drop team will be here soon. We just need to breach the command center. He studied the alien layout. The Alliance architecture favored efficiency over defensibility. Their species had few natural predators and fewer enemies before encountering humans. The command center had multiple entry points, thin walls, and minimal cover. Perfect, Ross murmured. Sir? They've backed themselves into a corner. They're expecting us to attack head-on through the main corridor because that's what they would do. Ross gestured to the ceiling with his remaining arm. But we're not them. Miller followed his gaze and noticed the maintenance access panel. You want us to go through the ventilation system? Humans have been crawling through ducts to surprise enemies since the 20th century. Ross grinned, despite the pain. Some traditions are worth keeping. 20 minutes later, Ross and 3 of his soldiers were positioned above the command center. Through the grated panel, he could see approximately 15 Alliance soldiers arranged in a defensive formation facing the main door. Their insectoid commander, distinguishable by ornate markings on its carapace, was studying a holographic display of the base. "They still think we're going to walk right into their guns," Ross whispered. "On my mark, flashbangs first, then we drop in from multiple points." He checked his weapon one last time. Operating it one-handed had become second nature in the hours since losing his arm. Necessity was indeed the mother of adaptation. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The flashbangs detonated simultaneously, filling the command center with blinding light and disorienting sound. The Alliance soldiers' compound eyes were particularly vulnerable to such attacks, their multiple visual receptors overwhelmed by the sudden intensity. Ross kicked open the panel and dropped into the room, landing awkwardly, but managing to stay upright. His squad followed, descending from different access points in a coordinated assault that left the disoriented aliens surrounded. "Weapons down!" Ross shouted, though he doubted the aliens understood English. His actions made the meaning clear, enough as he trained his gun on the alien commander. What happened next surprised him. The Alliance commander stepped forward and performed what appeared to be a formal gesture, all 4 arms extended, head lowered. "Surrender?" Ross wondered aloud. His question was answered as the remaining aliens lowered their weapons. The battle for Outpost KZ-4119 was over. As if on cue, the communications device on Ross's belt crackled to life. "Drop Team Alpha, this is Captain Mercer with the second wave. We've achieved orbit and are commencing landing operations. What's your situation?" Ross keyed the mic with his thumb. "This is Acting Captain Ross. We've secured the Alliance outpost and have prisoners." He glanced at his missing arm. "Request medical team on priority landing." "Copy that. Medics prepped and—" "Wait, did you say Captain Ross?" "Our intel said Lieutenant Ross was leading Alpha Team." Ross exchanged looks with Miller, who gave him a respectful nod. "Field promotion," Ross replied simply. "I'll explain in debriefing." As the adrenaline faded, the pain returned in full force. Ross slumped against a console, finally allowing himself to acknowledge the severity of his injury. Yet even as darkness encroached on the edges of his vision, he felt a strange sense of pride, not just in completing the mission, but in demonstrating to these alien invaders what humanity was capable of. The Alliance commander was still watching him, compound eyes focused on the biofoam-sealed stump where Ross's arm had been. In that alien gaze, Ross recognized something universal: respect. The human medical facility aboard the orbital station was a flurry of activity. Through a transparent observation window, Commander Vix watched as doctors worked on the one-armed human soldier who had led the assault on his base. "Fascinating, isn't it?" remarked Dr. Narix, the Alliance xenobiologist assigned to study the captured humans. "Their medical techniques are primitive compared to ours, yet remarkably effective for their technology level." Vix's antennae twitched with irritation. That creature lost a limb, continued fighting for hours, led a successful assault against superior numbers, and only then permitted medical attention. There is nothing primitive about their combat effectiveness. Dr. Narix made a notation on her datapad. "Yes, most interesting. Their pain tolerance exceeds anything in our records. Their biological redundancy systems are exceptional as well. Multiple organs, distributed circulatory pathways, decentralized nervous response. Quite remarkable for non-engineered beings." On the other side of the glass, human doctors had stabilized. The soldier, Ross, Vix had learned was his designation. The human was conscious now, speaking with another human wearing what appeared to be command insignia. "Can we hear what they're saying?" Vix asked. Dr. Narix adjusted a setting on the observation panel and sound filtered through. "We'll recommend you for the Silver Star at minimum," the commanding human was saying. "Taking the outpost with half your original squad and one arm, that's going in the history books, Captain." The injured human, Ross, shook his head. The squad did the work, sir. I just pointed them in the right direction. Always the modest one, Ross. Well, the medics tell me you're stable enough for transfer to the Einstein for proper treatment. They're prepping a synthetic replacement arm for you, military grade. Should be better than the original. Ross looked down at the bandaged stump. How long until I can return to active duty? The commander seemed surprised. You want to go back, after this? With respect, sir, we're at war. The Alliance isn't going to stop with one failed incursion. I need to be out there. Vix's mandibles clicked in surprise. The human wasn't just resilient in battle. It was eager to return despite catastrophic injury. The human commander nodded. 3 weeks integration time for the new arm, then combat recertification. You could be back with a unit in a month, if that's what you want. It is, sir. After the commander left, Ross lay back on the medical bed, staring at the ceiling. He seemed lost in thought until his eyes suddenly shifted toward the observation window. Despite the one-way transparency, the human stared directly at where Vic stood, as if he could somehow sense the commander's presence. Dr. Narix switched off the audio. We should discuss your report to the High Command. The combat data you provided on human resilience is concerning. Vix continued to stare at the human who seemed to be looking right back at him. My report will recommend immediate cessation of hostilities and diplomatic engagement with the human government. Surrender? Dr. Narix's voice held shock. Based on one encounter, based on understanding what we are facing, Vix corrected. That human will have a replacement limb in weeks and return to combat. Our soldiers who lost limbs in the battle are permanently removed from service. The implications are clear. He turned away from the window. The Alliance has always prevailed through superior technology and tactical coordination. But these humans, they adapt at a rate we cannot match. They improvise, they endure, they overcome limitations that would defeat any of our species. You sound almost admiring, Commander. Vix considered this. Perhaps I am. There is honor in recognizing a superior approach to warfare. As they left the observation area, Vix glanced back once more at the human soldier. In his decades of military service, he had never encountered a species that could lose a limb and continue fighting effectively. The implications were profound, not just for this conflict, but for the Alliance's place in the galactic order. The humans didn't just inhabit a death world, they had mastered it. And now, they were bringing that mastery to the stars. The medical bay of the UES Einstein hummed with advanced technology. Ross lay on a surgical bed, watching as technicians made final adjustments to his new cybernetic arm. Flex your fingers again, Captain, instructed Dr. Patel, monitoring neural response patterns on a holographic display. Good. Now rotate the wrist. Ross complied, watching with fascination as the metallic fingers moved in perfect synchronization with his mental commands. The arm was military-grade titanium alloy with carbon fiber musculature, designed to interface directly with his nervous system. It was stronger than his original arm and packed with tactical enhancements. Integrated ballistic shielding, emergency, medical systems, and enhanced strength parameters. How does it feel? Asked Dr. Patel. Strange, Ross admitted. I can feel pressure, temperature, but it's different. Translated. Your brain will adapt, the doctor assured him. The neural interface is already showing remarkable integration rates. You've shaved almost a week off the typical adjustment period. Ross wasn't surprised. Since childhood, he'd demonstrated exceptional neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt quickly to new circumstances. It was what had made him an excellent soldier, and now it was helping him recover from what should have been a career-ending injury. A soft chime indicated someone at the door. General Harris, commander of the Einstein battle group, entered with his characteristic brisk stride. Doctor, may I have a moment with the captain? Dr. Patel nodded and stepped out, leaving Ross alone with the general. At ease, Harris said as Ross attempted to sit straighter. How's the new hardware treating you? Ross flexed the mechanical fingers. Getting there, sir. I'll be ready for recertification next week. Harris pulled up a chair. About that. There's been a development. The Alliance has requested a formal parley. Seems your little one-armed rampage made quite an impression on them. Sir? The commander you captured, Vix, I believe, has been sending reports back to his superiors. Apparently, watching a human lose a limb and keep fighting effectively has caused quite the stir in their military hierarchy. Ross thought back to the alien commander's compound eyes studying him through the observation glass. They weren't prepared for how humans fight. No, they weren't, Harris agreed. Their species evolved with exoskeletons. Lose a limb, you bleed out immediately. Their entire tactical doctrine is built around perfect coordination and preservation of forces. The idea of adapting to catastrophic injury and continuing the mission, it's completely foreign to them. The general stood and walked to the viewport looking out at the stars. High Command wants you at the diplomatic talks. Ross blinked in surprise. Me? I'm just a field officer, sir. You're also the first human to engage the Alliance in ground combat and win. More importantly, you're living proof of what the Alliance fears most about us, our adaptability. Ross looked down at his cybernetic arm, understanding dawning. You want me there as a symbol? Exactly. They need to understand what they're dealing with. Humans don't just survive death worlds, Captain Ross. We thrive on them. We take what tries to kill us and turn it into advantage. The general turned back from the viewport. The talks begin in 3 days. You'll accompany me as military attaché. Yes, sir. Ross hesitated, then asked, What about my squad? They'll be there too. Full honors. The Alliance requested their presence specifically. After the general left, Ross continued exercising his new arm, pushing through the integration protocols faster than the medical AI could update them. If he was going to represent humanity to these aliens, he wanted to demonstrate precisely what humans were capable of, not just surviving loss, but emerging stronger. As he worked, he thought about Commander Vix. There had been something in those alien eyes beyond fear, recognition perhaps, understanding. The Alliance commander had recognized in Ross something fundamental about humanity's place in the cosmos. They were Deathworlders, yes. But more than that, they were adapters. Evolution had forged them in the crucible of Earth's unforgiving environment, creating beings who viewed obstacles not as defeats, but as challenges to overcome. Ross smiled grimly as he calibrated the arm's precision grip. The Alliance was about to learn that humanity's true strength wasn't in their weapons or their ships, or even their numbers. It was in their refusal to accept limitation. The diplomatic chamber aboard the neutral station Harmony Point was designed to accommodate multiple species. For the humans, standard gravity and atmospheric conditions prevailed on their side. For the Alliance representatives, higher oxygen levels and slightly reduced gravity created a more comfortable environment. Captain Ross stood at parade rest behind General Harris, conscious of how his cybernetic arm gleamed under the chamber's lighting. The limb had been left deliberately uncovered, a visible reminder of what had brought them all to this negotiating table. Across the room, Commander Vix led the Alliance delegation, his carapace bearing newly added diplomatic markings. Their eyes met briefly across the chamber, a moment of silent recognition passing between warriors. This formal session will now commence, announced the Harmony Point AI mediator, its holographic form hovering above the central table. The United Earth Government and the Galactic Alliance have agreed to discuss terms following recent military engagement at Outpost KZ-419. General Harris spoke first. We appreciate the Alliance's willingness to engage in dialogue rather than continued conflict. Earth desires peaceful relations with all galactic civilizations, but we will defend our sovereignty without hesitation. The Alliance High Commissioner, an elder member of Vix's species, responded with formal precision. The Alliance acknowledges Earth's military capabilities and unique adaptations. His compound eyes flicked toward Ross's cybernetic arm. Our initial assessment of human combat potential was in error. Ross listened as the diplomats exchanged carefully prepared statements, but his attention remained on Commander Vix, who seemed equally disinterested in the diplomatic niceties. They were soldiers, not politicians. They understood what had really happened at the outpost, not just a tactical victory but a fundamental shift in understanding. After an hour of formal exchanges, the talks paused for a scheduled recess. As the diplomats withdrew to their respective consultation chambers, Ross found himself approached by Commander Vix. "Captain Ross," the alien said, his translator rendering his clicks and chirps into English. "I requested permission to speak with you directly." Ross nodded. "Commander, your troops fought well." "Not well enough," Vix responded with surprising candor. "May I?" He gestured to Ross's cybernetic arm. Ross extended the limb, allowing the alien commander to examine it. Vix's sensory appendages hovered over the metal and carbon fiber construction, not quite touching. "Your medical technology allowed this?" "Yes, it's actually stronger than my original arm now." Vix's mandibles clicked in what Ross had come to recognize as their equivalent of thoughtful contemplation. "On my world, Commander, a predator that loses a limb becomes prey. No exceptions." "Earth has similar rules," Ross acknowledged. "But humans, we've always been good at breaking natural laws." "So I observed." Vix stepped back. "Before this conflict, our tactical analysis designated humans as a moderate threat, technologically advancing but evolutionarily limited. We were wrong." Ross smiled slightly. "It's an easy mistake to make. We don't look particularly impressive. Compared to some species." "No," Vix agreed, "but appearances are deceptive. My report to High Command included a recommendation to reclassify Earth." "Oh?" "From moderate threat to existential danger," Vix said calmly. "Not because you defeated us at the outpost, but because of what you represent, a species that treats catastrophic injury as a temporary setback, a species that improves upon loss." The alien gestured toward the diplomatic chambers. "This is why we requested peace talks so quickly. The Alliance has encountered many species in its expansion. Some were stronger, some faster, some more numerically superior, but none adapted like humans." Ross understood then why he had been brought to these talks, not just as a symbol for the Alliance, but as a message from his own government, a living demonstration of humanity's defining characteristic. "What will happen now?" Ross asked. "Peace, I expect," Vix answered. "The Alliance does not wage wars it cannot win, and a conflict with Deathworlders who grow stronger from adversity is not winnable through conventional means." The call came for delegates to return to the chamber. As they walked back together, Vix made one final observation. "In our educational curriculum, there is a saying about evolution: adapt or perish. Until meeting humans, I never truly understood its meaning. Your species doesn't just adapt to survive. You adapt to thrive." Ross flexed his mechanical fingers, the servos humming softly. "That's the thing about coming from a death world. Commander, every day is practice for the impossible." As the peace treaty was signed hours later, establishing boundaries and mutual recognition between Earth and the Alliance, Ross thought about the future. Humanity was stepping onto the galactic stage not as conquerors or victims, but as survivors. Beings forged in the crucible of a world that had tried and failed to kill them for millions of years. The galaxy would soon learn what the Alliance already had. Underestimating humans was a mistake you only made once. They didn't just survive losing limbs in battle. They came back stronger, more determined, and ready to face whatever challenges awaited among the stars. In the end, that resilience, the stubborn refusal to acknowledge defeat, might prove to be humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization. And it had all started with one soldier who simply refused to stop fighting when conventional wisdom said he should have been defeated.